Hey Internet, this is Nate, and welcome to my updated Swarm Survival tier list. So I did this tier list back in August for a live stream. Since then, I've played a lot of games. I've played these games even more. Several of them have been updated, and I thought it was a good time to kind of go back, revisit where I feel like all the games rank after all the updates and new games have been released. So when I originally did this tier list, there were 9 games shown here. Reviewed Nomad Survival, Vampire Survivors, Soulstone Survivors, Rogue Genesia, Project Lazarus, Bone Razor Minions, Brotato, Bounty of One, and 20 Minutes Till Dawn. In addition to those 9 games, we're going to be talking about 4 new ones. They are Spellbook Demon Slayers, Hollow Cure, Army of Ruin, and Her Name Was Fire. For the different ranking criteria, we're going to use the same ones we used before. They are tactical gameplay elements, visual style, visual clarity, replayability, variety, and sound and music. For each one of these criteria, we're going to give a score from A to F. You can see a points value there, and then we're going to give them an overall rating based on their average score across all 5 grading criteria. All right, let's jump into it. So, starting with tactical gameplay elements. A couple games we're going to move here. The first one is actually Vampire Survivors itself. Vampire Survivors, I'm going to bump up to the B tier, and the reason for that is I think, one, I was a little bit harsh on Vampire Survivors in terms of how dynamic its weapons are, in terms of how you move. There's a lot of weapons that actually do require a lot of tactical movement to take advantage of. And the second is, now there are several boss fights that are actually quite interesting. So in addition to like the map-based objectives and the more interesting like movement-based weapons, I think it deserves to be in the B tier with some other games. The other one I'm going to move is Brotato. We're going to bump Brotato up from a D to a C. One, I found that it has twin stick capabilities, so that already just gives it a bump. But in addition, I think the boss fights now are a little bit more interesting at the end of the, at the end of all of your waves, you have to fight a boss fight, and I find that boss fight to be kind of interesting. And so given that it's a little bit more dynamic, enemies have a little bit more dynamic movement, I'm going to keep it in the C tier. I don't think it's quite B tier level, but I think it's definitely better than I had originally given it credit for. Now on to the new games, starting with Spellbook Demon Slayers. So Spellbook Demon Slayers, it does have like which way you're moving can shoot weapons, and it does have objective, like map objective based thing. You have these shrines that if you stand in the middle of these shrines, then you get abilities for killing enemies within those shrines. So I think there are some interesting things there, but I would say it's still pretty simple compared to some of the other games. There's no dash, there's no twin stick mechanic, and there's no like special abilities. Given all of those, I'm going to keep it there in the tier, kind of in line with Brotato and Project Lazarus. Next, Army of Ruin. So I think Army of Ruin has the potential to be better. What's really holding Army of Ruin back and why it's in the C tier rather than like the B or A tier is that it just feels a little sluggish. Everything, including the enemies, move a little bit too slow. And so it kind of feels a little bit off, in my opinion. But it does have characters with special abilities. You do have characters that are weapons that, go where you aim. And there are map-based objectives that you can collect in the form of like pickups and treasure chests. And so based on that, I think it still is good in the C tier. But yeah, if the speed were to get cranked up by around like 20-30%, I think it would easily land in the B tier for me. Next is Hollow Cure. So Hollow Cure has full twin stick if you play with the gamepad, and it's got special abilities for every character that are unique, and it has dynamic boss fights. I don't think it's quite to the level of like a 20 Minutes Till Dawn or a Rogue Genesia, which have a lot more complex mechanics, has dashes and things like that as well. But I think it's like right on the cusp. It's really, really solid. Surprisingly solid for a fan game. And for that reason, I'm putting it up there in the B tier. And finally, Her Name Was Fire. Her Name Was Fire has dashes, has twin stick shooting, has boss fights, has dynamic enemies, has this whole like find map objectives. It's got like all the things. And so for that reason, I think it definitely deserves to be in the A tier. It's one of the best feeling games, I think. It also has that similar to 20 Minutes Till Dawn, where when you fire, you move slower, which I find quite interesting as well. So then there's this kind of like give and take of when do you shoot and when do you not. It's definitely one of the best feeling games, I think, out of all of them. Next up, visual style, visual clarity. So none of the games really changed here. So they're all going to kind of stay where they're at. So let's jump into the new games then immediately and talk about their visual style, visual clarity. So we'll start with Spellbook Demon Slayers. Open it up. Spellbook Demon Slayers has like a decent-ish UI, although right now it's not really letting me use my mouse. Well, okay, I guess I can see. Got a decent-ish UI, definitely better than something like a Nomad Survival, but only like marginally better. The menus are a little awkward. There's a lot of different upgrade menus as well. None of this looks like particularly great. We're just talking about rectangles with so I don't know, like it looks okay, but it's not like super great. And then again, you get to like even more upgrade menus. UI, I think, like really kind of not that super great. Then once you get into the game, like it's okay. It's okay. But like not incredible, right? So the character herself, I think, looks the best out of all the different things. But the enemies all kind of look plain. Their animations are kind of boring. It is kind of bloody, which is kind of funny. It's like one of the only like actually bloody games. And like some of the animations are pretty cool, but I would still say like the background looks really, really plain. The gems kind of look really, really plain. I don't know. It's just not incredible in my opinion. And I think that if the backgrounds became more dynamic and some of like these animations became a little bit cleaned up, then I think it would definitely go higher. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and leave one in the B tier. Next up is Hollow Cure. Jump into Hollow Cure. Go. So Hollow Cure, I think it has like a decent-ish UI. Like, I think it's okay. It all looks pretty good. I will say the lack of being able to use arrow keys is a little bit but in general, it's pretty good. What I really love about Hollow Cure, though, is the characters all look really, really, really great. And I'm not a big Hololive person, but having seen a few clips that are recommended by viewers, I've been playing the game. Definitely everything looks spot on with their animation. And once you get in the game, like it's full of charm and character. Like it looks really, really nice. I really like it a lot. Everything's kind of funny. It's very meme-ish. As I'm kind of like learning a tiny little bit about the Hololive lore. Funny where like all these random things come from. I think it looks really, really nice. I don't think it's as good as like a Rogue Genesia, but I think it actually looks really, really clean, really, really nice. Especially again for like a fan-made game. Really, really good. And animations look great. The everything has like a reason behind it. I don't know. I really like it. And so for all those reasons, I'm gonna go ahead and put it on par, like Vampire Survivors, 20 Minutes Till Dawn, Soulstone Survivors, in that B tier. And next we have Her Name Was Fire. Her Name Was Fire, I also think looks really nice. It's still a very different style, but I don't think it's bad. The menu is really clean, really clean. Very simple. And then once you get into the game, it definitely has this like kind of vibe about it. The shots look really nice. I like how there's like a little bit of screen fake when you fire. Enemies blow up. They have this nice little smoke that they go into. There's a whole bunch of dynamic looking bosses. You get hit, it has this like really visceral full effect in addition to the sound. And I kind of just like this minimalist art style with these like minimalist cards to level up. I think it all looks really, really clean. I think it's got really good visual clarity as well. Like, it's very rare that you get hit by something. And the effects don't get too much for me that you can't tell what's going on. And so for all those reasons, I'm going to go ahead and place Her Name Was Fire directly into the B tier. And last up is Army of Ruin. So Army of Ruin's a pretty new game in the genre. Just came out in early access for like not too long ago. But I actually think it looks like really, really good. So let me just wait till the menu. There's the menu. Menu looks really clean. Everything looks like, I don't know, I just feel like it looks really, really nice. You have all your unlocks. You have different challenges. And then once you get into the game, I also think it looks really, really nice as well. Got this kind of like, I don't know, Magica-esque feel to it. And yeah, I think it just looks really, really nice. The character animations are really good. The enemy animations are really good. Like, they actually like turn stuff. The look at like the background just looks really nice. Heavy detail, crash textures, fog. The animations of the weapons all look really nice. When enemies die, they like get flung. Like, I just think it looks really, really cool. One of the better looking ones. This one looks actually like, yeah, almost like Torchlight-esque. Oh. And all these icons look really, really awesome. The level up UI looks really clean. That I have, like, I just really like it. I think it's one of the best UIs and one of the best visual styles, up there with like Rogue. And for that reason, I'm gonna go ahead and put Army of Ruin right up there in A tier. Okay. Next up, replayability. I think replayability, we have some pretty big movements here. The first one I'm going to do is moving Soulstone Survivors all the way up into the A tier. There are a ton of new game modes, Soulstone Survivors. First off, and by the way, I'm talking about the early access release that's getting released on the 7th, not the prologue or the demo. In the early access, every map has curses you can add. There are different difficulty levels for every map. There is a whole bunch of new maps, and there's tons of unlockable stuff now. There's characters you can unlock, abilities you can unlock, maps you can unlock. Like, it really got overhauled. And for all of those reasons, I think it definitely deserves being bumped up all the way into the A tier. It's up there now with some of like the best in terms of unlockables and modes available. Rogue Genesia as well is getting bumped up. Rogue Genesia has even more unlockables. It now has challenge modes in addition to its endless mode and its regular mode. Now, not all challenge modes are created equal, but the ones that I've done I think are all pretty fun. So definitely, I think, deserving of that bump as well. And finally, Brotato. Also, I think I kind of underestimated how many unlockables there are in Brotato. There's a ton of them with new characters, new weapons available, and the game mode tiers are pretty good. Still not on par with like Vampire Survivors, Soulstone Survivors, Rogue Genesia, or Nomad Survival, but definitely better than I originally gave it credit for when I first. For the new games, Her Name Was Fire. Honestly, not that great. There's two different game modes, one that takes longer, one that is shorter, and there's like a few unlockable things, but outside of that, there's not too much. And for that reason, I'm going to kind of put it in this tier. I will say it does have a very solid base game mode, though, where you go through these different levels, and each level has kind of early sequence finalized with a boss fight. I think that part is like quite strong, but I definitely put it on the same kind of level as like Bounty of One. not tons of game modes. There's not tons to unlock. Next is Hollow Cure. Hollow Cure, very similar. Most everything that you unlock is unlocked through like a gacha mechanic for most of the characters. There are some like weapons and accessories you can unlock, but there's not a ton of them. In terms of game modes, there's an endless mode and a not endless mode. It's really on the cusp of being in B tier. I think it only needs maybe, I don't know, a couple more like maps, maybe get it there for me. But it's like right on the edge. It's probably the closest to the B tier out of the C tier. Next is Spellbook Demon Slayers. Spellbook Demon Slayers also has like several different characters you can unlock. It doesn't really have very many different game modes though, although you can like up the of the main mode. It does have like a curse mechanic, but I just don't think it's quite as strong in terms of replayability. And the game mode itself is just okay. It's just basically always endless mode, which is fine, but definitely not as dynamic as some of the others. And there's not that much to unlock, to be honest. Most of it's unlocked via like spending, and then there's like a handful of characters. That's it. And finally, Army of Ruin. I feel like, or not finally. Army of Ruin, there's after this. Army of Ruin actually has quite a lot to unlock, as you saw when I was going through it. Tons of weapons, handful of characters, and every single map has 3 different tiers of difficulty that don't just like make it more difficult. They add new boss fights or more difficult boss fights. They also add more waves, and the waves themselves become more difficult. So I think it's actually one of the like nicer ones in terms of like progression, because you replay the maps now with more difficult time. And as I said, there's tons and tons and tons of unlockable weapons and unlockable items. More than I originally thought there would be when I started playing the game. Oh, and I guess that is everything, right? 1, 2. Yep, that was everything. Okay, next up is variety for characters, maps, and ability. So first thing I'm going to do is bump up Brotato again. I think Brotato, having played lots of different characters, it is incredible how different they. I completely underestimated how different each character plays out in Brotato. It is like a whole different game, some characters. And for that alone, I'm going to bump it up. It doesn't have very good maps. It doesn't have the most weapons in the world. But the fact that characters all play so differently, you get a lot of value just by playing all the different characters. The next one we're going to bump up is Soulstone Survivors. Soulstone Survivors doubles its characters with its early access for 12. And now they're all more dynamic. So each character can only get specific types of weapons. So they all feel a bit different from each other, in addition to like their base stat differences and their base weapon differences. They now can only get certain types of weapons, which I find feels a lot better. Carves out their own identity. There's now more maps. There's way more abilities, like double the abilities from the prologue demo version. And for all those reasons, it's like B tier. It's almost A tier though. It's like super, super close. I think once they add some of the upgrades to some of the characters, I will bump it up to the A tier. It's like already right on the edge. And Bounty of One did get a little bit more variety. It has a few more new characters, has a few upgrades, but still not enough to put it into the B tier. But I will acknowledge that it has improved, and there is a little bit more there in terms of characters and abilities. Her name was Fire. I'm going to put in the D tier. There's only 3 starter weapons, and then it's just upgrades. No other characters. There's no other maps. Not really that many abilities. So it's definitely the most bare bones in variety. And it doesn't look like it's going to get much more. I think it's probably kind of where it's at, based on how I'm interpreting like the updates from the developers. So I think it's basically what you're going to get. But I mean, what you get is pretty solid, but it's just not a lot there. Next up is Spellbook Demon Slayers. It's probably on par, closest with like Bounty of One, where there are technically different starting weapons you can get. There's not that many abilities in the game, and there's only one map. So a lot of the levels, at least a lot of the runs end up feeling pretty similar to me. However, the starting weapon does get pretty different depending on which one you pick. So for that reason, it's not in the D tier, but it's definitely not enough to get into the Hollow Cure. Each character feels completely different. It just only has 2 maps. So I think it just needs more maps, and I think even more abilities. But I think that's on the roadmap. So I think this is a B, but I think it could easily become an A in the future as more characters get added. But I really love how dynamic each character feels. You can, it's like Brotato levels of difference, just not quite Brotato's level of volume, number of characters, and number of abilities. And Army of Ruin. Army of Ruin really held back by its limited number of characters, but it does have a ton of abilities, a ton of items, way more than a lot of the other games in the genre. And it also, like, the characters feel pretty different because they have very different special abilities and different, like, base passive stats, which kind of carves them out their own niche. And the fact that maps can be replayed, and when you replay them, they actually have different waves, not just more of them. I feel like it's like actually pretty good with a variety. Not on the level of like Brotato Vampire Survivors, but still pretty good. But this one I see also getting into the A tier as it adds more characters and adds more maps. Okay, sound and music. Again, none of them have changed their sound and music too much. I mean, Vampire Survivors added a few things just it even more firmly placed in the top tier there, but otherwise not too much changed. One thing I am going to do though is I am going to swap Soulstone Survivors and Bounty of One. I think Bounty of One, I overgraded its sound and music, and Soulstone Survivors now has music tied to each map, and some of the newer ones are actually like pretty good, and for that reason I'm going to do a little swappy there and put Soulstone Survivors up in the B tier and put Bounty of One down into the C tier. For the others, let's start off with Her Name Was Fire. And for that, let's just kind of play the sounds. Get a kind of feel for how they go. I'm going to use my controller for this to hopefully not ruin everything. Go. Let me turn off my background music while we go through the kind of music. Go. Again, music in Her Name Was Fire is like okay. Like it definitely has that moody feel to it. And I like the sounds in the game as well. But it really is just this. This is the music the whole time. It doesn't really change that much. And in addition, like there's not like that many sounds, right? The sound of picking stuff up is kind of okay. And the sound of hitting things actually sounds pretty impactful, but that's like basically it. And it's just this. Like this is all you're getting. It's like basically 20 minutes till dawn, but even less interesting, in my opinion, for sound. And if I go to like the menu, it's got another song and it's okay, but like again, not too much here. So for that reason, I'm gonna keep it firmly in the C tier for now. Next up, Hollow Cure. Let me just listen to the nice sounds of Hollow Cure in the background. Most importantly, oh yeah, that's the stuff. Really, really nice sounds. Really, really nice music, in my opinion. I have it like a little bit too loud. Hold on a second. Yeah, just, I mean, I guess the soundtrack is based on Hollow Live, so it makes sense that it's quite good, because it is like a music group in the end, in a lot of ways. Yeah, I think the sounds all sound really nice. Pickups sound really nice. The level up sounds really nice. Yeah, it's just good. It's not incredible, but it's like good. And you have like the main, sound here as well. It all kind of sounds that kind of like Game Boy, Nintendo sound. And I think it all fits really, really well. Not quite as good as like Vampire Survivors or Bone Razor Minions, but definitely really, really nice. And for that reason, I'm going to put it up there in the B tier. Next up is Spellbook Demon Slayers. Let me get the sounds in here. Actually, Spellbook Demon Slayers, surprisingly, despite its bad UI, has like really, really, really good music. Let's pump the music all the way up to full here. Again. Oh, it's going so slow. So pump up that music. Like, just the starting music is already pretty nice. Up this up again. But then once you get in the game goes so hard. Like, it's ridiculous how hard the game goes. I don't know if you're ready for this. Oh, it's so good. It's like Mega Man Doom-esque. It's so good. And the song changes over time. It's not just this one song. There's a whole bunch of songs. Sounds sound really good. They're very visceral. Oh yeah, it's awesome. It's probably one of my favorite soundtracks of any of the games. Independent. It's like really, really, really solid. And the sounds, I think, are all like really, really nice. So it's got really good menu music. It's got really, really good in-game music that changes over time as you get farther and farther in. Plus, it just goes so hard, guys. You can't deny that the music here goes so hard. It's so good. And for that reason, I'm putting Spellbook. Also, I love that when you pause it, it sounds muffled. Hilarious. But yeah, so for those reasons, I'm gonna put it into the A tier. And last, Army of Ruin. I think Army of Ruin as well. Let me get the sounds rolling. Oh, it's kind of loud. Hold on. I really like it. I think it sounds really, really clean. You can turn on the music just a bit more. Oh man, the music is still like, as much as I keep turning it down, it's just doesn't actually turn down that much. There we go. That's a little bit better. Yeah, I think the music is really nice here. Plus, all the sounds sound really nice. Enemies like make a little noise when they die. That's kind of nice. The abilities have really visceral sounds. When you get hit, it has a really intense sound. Your character makes a little ouch. It's always nice. And by the way, that's just the sound. That's just the music for this map. We go into the other maps. Completely different music. Also really nice music, though. Really, really like the sounds and music in this game, too. Very ominous sounding. Also has that kind of muffled effect when you level up, which is kind of cool. And then just to complete things, third song, also really, really nice. This one I actually think is my favorite of all the songs. This is the third map song. Yeah, that's nice. Feels like this like factory music that totally fits the map. Like, I love it. So good. And for that reason, just the music and the sounds, just really, really, really solid. Definitely one of the best in the genre. I'm gonna go ahead and put Army of Ruin into the A tier. And let's move on to the very, very last, not least, final grades and comments. So, starting at the bottom of the barrel, we have Project Lazarus. I feel bad. I like trash Project Lazarus. I just think, I don't know, it has the makings of being good, but it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't sound good. It does look quite good, but for me, it's my least favorite of the entire genre. I really think it's a little bit of a disappointment because I think it looks so nice, but just feels not fun, in my opinion. Moving up into now, I would say the kind of average Swarm Survivor. We'll start off with Bounty of One. I think Bounty of One has a lot of promise, but it's just very, very, very slowly trickling content in. And for me, it's just going a little bit too slowly, and it's not catching up with its peers, which have way more characters or way more content or way better game modes, and just kind of is sitting here in this kind of like average, slightly above average rank. Her Name Was Fire. I think Her Name Was Fire definitely has one of the best feels in the game in terms of how the game plays, but it has just almost no content and replayability. Once you've beaten it, like this is a game you sit down and play in one sitting and you're done. Like you play this for 4 hours and you've already beaten it all the way, done everything. Not really much else to do. And so unless this gets a lot more content, I don't see this one radically improving in my ranking. It's going to stay here, similar to Bounty of One, in B tier. Next up, Spellbook Demon Slayers. Spellbook Demon Slayers, I think like the music is incredible, the sound is incredible, but visually very, very poor compared to a lot of the others in the genre. And there's just not that much variety. It's just one map. Or I guess there's technically now 2 maps, but the 2 maps and not much else beyond that. So for that reason, I'm keeping it in the C tier. I think if they can just buff up the like visuals and buff up the amount of like variety, I would rank this one up into like B or potentially low A. Nomad Survival hasn't changed. Gonna stay here as just standard B. It's fully released, it's done. I think it was a good exercise for the developers to go through, but I think it's gonna kind of firmly be, I would say, like the benchmark for the minimum for a good Swarm Survival game that's worth your time, worth your money. And from here on out, I think we only get into what I would say are the good Swarm Survivor games, the ones that are definitely worth buying if you like the genre. And that starts with Brotato. Brotato, I think the only thing holding Brotato back is that the game modes itself are not that interesting. It's just survive these waves. And it does survive these waves really well, but the waves are always the same. There's only a couple of different bosses. What really like saves Brotato from being C tier is how different each character plays. And that the music's okay. Visual style is not my favorite. Again, number of game modes is not great. It just has a ton of characters and they all feel different. Is its saving grace. Next up is Bone Razor Minions. Kind of in that similar spot. I think it's a great one to get and play through. I personally don't like have an urge to go back to it. I think I got what I wanted out of the game. But I could see people investing a lot more time than I did in the game. Certainly exploring all the game modes much more in depth. Doing all the characters much more in depth. But for me, it kind of sits in this it's kind of same spot as Brotato, Nomad Survival. I think it has more game modes, more dynamic game modes than Brotato, but less character variety than Brotato. So puts them on kind of in the same D-, above average, but not great games. Hollow Cure, I think, is a step up from these ones. Surprisingly, for a fan-made game, Hollow Cure is like actually quite good. The characters feel as dynamic as they do in Brotato, but it has actual maps, it has more game modes, has a lot of good content. I personally think it's just way better than it has any right to be. And for that reason, I'm putting it as a B. But I see Hollow Cure, with some updates, definitely getting bumped up into the A tier. It's like right on the edge. If it has a little bit more characters, and a few more maps, like it's definitely up in the A tier. Next up, 20 Minutes Till Dawn, unchanged. Kind of fits with Hollow Cure. Really good game, one of the best like tactical combat games. Just not as much variety. Music and sound is just okay. Visual style is just okay. And I think those are what's really holding it back. If it adds a lot more variety, a lot more game modes, then I can see bumping it up into. Now let's talk about the A tier, starting with Army of Ruin. Army of Ruin is like right on the edge. This could easily be B tier. What puts Army of Ruin over the top is its really good graphical style, its great music and sound, and the amount of unlocks that there are in the game is like pretty good for like an on release. What holds it back from being the best in the genre is it still feels sluggish. If everything could be tuned up a bit and then have more characters, I could see this easily being the best in the genre. It's really close. It just that sluggish feeling just really holds it back from being as good as some of the others. Soulstone Survivors, massive improvement between the prologue and the early access release. Early access release has so much more content, has so many more characters. The characters now actually feel dynamic, different from one another. Huge improvement. And I see this one, especially once they introduce runes, once they introduce more characters and maps, I could easily see this one being also best in the genre. It's really like, it's incredible to me, having gone back and now replayed this a few times. Like, it's really good now. It's a really good game now. Definitely worth it, in my opinion, on early access. Rogue Genesia, still up here as one of the best. Adding the challenge modes only made it even better. What's holding Rogue Genesia back? You still only have the one character. And while there are different maps, I would say it's not super dynamic. Having the extra world was kind of nice, but it's my least favorite of the worlds. So I think just adding more characters and maybe making the maps dynamic, and holy shit, get rid of the music because it's so bad. Get better music, and this will definitely be up there as the top in the genre. And then Vampire Survivors, still the king after all this time, but man, it's got a lot of competitors that are coming up ready to dethrone it as the best Swarm Survivor. But still, its music, its number of characters, its number of maps, the number of unlocks, the progression system, still just beats out everybody else. And for that reason, it's staying at the top in the A tier. But yeah, in my opinion, the ones to look out for as far as ones that could definitely become the best in the genre, I think Vampire Survivors has kind of reached its pinnacle. I don't think it's going to get much better. In fact, I would recommend Ponkel make a new game, make something different, add to their library. I think they can kind of trampoline off of Vampire Survivors and really accelerate as a development studio now with multiple people developing by getting into a new game. That's what my recommendation. Rogue Genesia, I think very easily could become top tier with more characters. I think there's still a long pathway to go there for it to improve. Soulstone Survivors, very similar. Army of Ruin, I think, needs to have a fundamental change in its speed, and that might not ever happen. And if it doesn't, I don't think it will ever become the best in the genre. It's that sluggish feeling that will hold it back, no matter how many characters and maps and so on that it adds, will be a turnoff to players who are more used to things like Brotato and Vampire Survivors and Rogue Genesia, and kind of feel a little bit better. Outside of that, I don't think 20 Minutes Till Dawn is going to get much better. I don't think Brotato is going to get much better. Hollow Cure, I think, could get much better. It just needs more content. It's still one of the best feeling games. It just needs more content, and I think more content is coming. And then for the rest, Bounty of One could still get there, but it needs a lot. It needs a lot of new stuff to get it there, and it's developing so slowly. I'm not certain that it will get that top of the genre. And I think Her Name Was Fire is probably pretty much done. Spellbook Demon Slayers could get into B tier if they can improve the graphics quite a lot and the UI a little bit. And that's going to do it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed this update to my Swarm Survivor tier list. And with that, I will see you next time. See you later.